Welcome to the More Than Words podcast. You know who you got here. We got myself, Shara, and
Liz.
yes, and two together, we are the Aunties of Inclusion. So we want to welcome you to a great show today. Listen, I usually don't just tell you early on there's going to be a great show, but let me just tell you what listen, make sure you turn your volume up. Clear out whatever you had planned while you was going to multitask. I need you to be fully focused because we have an amazing guest out here for you, Liz. How excited are you for right now?
I can tell that you're very, very excited about this because you usually hold out on the excitement, and usually it's me that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm fangirling. But I am definitely fangirling. I'm so excited. We'll go ahead and do just a brief little catch up and into our auntie moment so that we can get into our guest because this is an amazing guest. And people don't know this, and I think I'm going to start recording them or at least videoing part of it. But we usually do discovery calls with all of our guests. I know I'm giving everybody what I'm doing, but we do discovery calls, right? Because these are vulnerable conversations. And it's always like, why are we recording? This
Right,
is amazing
right.
stuff. It's
Yes.
so
Y'all don't know, but y'all about to get some of it. Cause I'm telling you right now, listen, I got a little hot flash going on because I'm so excited. Like my underarms is hot. Like they is hot a little bit because I'm ready. I'm so excited. Listen, before we get to that though, right? Okay, Liz, auntie moment, right? We gotta catch people up. What has been going on? So for those y'all just don't know, Liz and I have been on a world trip, clearly. More meat around the world so I can see Liz. So I'm literally off the high of our UK strategy planning, friend catch up, me out making sure that my girl is good over there, living her best UK life. But I haven't had a chance to talk to Liz all week. So I'm like, Liz, what's been going on? I'm giving you the auntie moment. I'm putting the pressure on you right now.
so I put the pressure on you last time. Now you're putting the pressure on me. I get it.
Allegedly,
I
because
see
they
how
don't
you
know.
work.
They allegedly
Hmm.
don't know. They don't know. They don't know how you
Okay.
treat me.
I treat you with love.
Oh,
I
for
love
the
you.
record. Look, that's for the record. That's for the record. Listen, call her out. Y'all know how she treat me, y'all. Go ahead.
So I do have two stories. One of them is the real auntie moment. The first one though is a confession. I gotta usher the confessions here.
Oh, where's the music? See, this is why we need to get music. Okay,
I
come
know, because
on.
then you
We,
can cue in. These are my
we can't
confessions.
afford that song. No, we gonna
Oh
have some
yeah, I had to edit
instrumental,
that out.
something. We can't afford that.
But so I have two children, as everyone knows. And this kind of relates to the topic that we are going to discuss today. And Shara, when you were here at our house and we were having a very vulnerable moment about where we were each at in our lives. And I think reflecting back, and I've been doing reflecting a lot back this week on a couple of things, and I'm looking at my journal, that's why I'm looking at this way. But and we'll go into the actual auntie moment here. Well, maybe this is it. But this is where I was telling you, as much as we want the future, right? We have all these things that we want in the future and we aspire to, and oftentimes we hear be present, enjoy where you're at, enjoy where you're at. And I think I told you that a lot over the last week where I was like, Shara, being in a relationship and having a family, like you're gonna have to want the good and the bad that comes with it. And you were like, yeah, yeah, okay. You're like, I still want it, right?
Period.
And because oh my gosh, it is a challenging moment. I think all my moms and all my caregivers and all the people who are in serious or in relationships with someone else, you realize very quickly that it's not about you anymore. It's not your timeline anymore. It now then does have to be an integration, and you have to be very firm on your values and boundaries when you either become a parent or you're a caregiver or you're in a relationship or whatever it may be. This weekend, my culture definitely came out this weekend. For those who don't know, in the Mexican culture, we have a thing called a chancla.
Mm,
It is the flip flop, right? And sometimes that chancla or the flip flop just like you're mad and you're annoyed and it just kind of slips off your foot, like just very slightly, like You're like, oh, you rein it back in. This time the chancla came out and it there was no violence. Don't worry, y'all. My kids are fine. Don't call child protective services on me. But it definitely slipped out a lot more than what I thought. I was like, I was just so angry. And then, I had this breakdown moment. I said, you know what? I need 5 minutes. I need 5 minutes. Please respect my time. I need 5 minutes. And they're crying. I'm crying. I go and I call my best friend at the time, right? You need to go and call your people right then and there. So I call my best friend, who's also a mom, and I said, I just can't take this anymore. I don't like who I am with these people. Why are they here? Da, 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 da. All that to say, I go back and think about my words for the year, and I think about why my values and my boundaries are so important. So two of the things that are kind of guiding myself, and we talked a lot about that in our 2023 episode, was surrounding joy and love. And so in those moments when that chancla wants to come out,
Right. I know.
whatever it is, to whether it's your relationship or your children or your job or your partnerships or your, being single and, all this stuff, right? At the end of the day, I had to take a moment back and say, what are my values? How am I applying them in this space? And trust me, that is hard as hell. I'm telling y'all that right now. It is hard. Because in that very moment, you're like, I don't care about my values. I'm going to chancla these kids.
Okay. In a heartbeat. First of all, Liz, look at you being all vulnerable today. Go on and tell your whole story. First of all, those of you don't know about that chocolate, let me tell you right now, for those of you who may be a cultural difference, it could have been a spoon. Okay, it could have been whatever is at the hands of the person who is at a level of frustration that is unknown, but because you were on the other side when you was a kid. They pick up something and it's to scare you. Okay, it's like that OK Corral when it's a Western and something just like, you know what I mean?
One of them things. That's exactly what that chancla looked like.
That's all it is. So whoever's trying to Google it and can't get the spelling right, I'm trying to give you the context of what we really talk about here, okay? It's that woo-woo, right, whatever it is. It's always something. It could be a lotion bottle. I've been there on the other side of that as a kid. Like, what you gonna do with that? I'm still scared, though. Okay. But anyway, first of all, I'm proud of you, Liz. Like, listen, being in a part of your family for that week, it's a lot of moving parts. And there's a lot of needs individually and collectively that have to be addressed every single day. So one, thank you so much for being vulnerable for all those who are probably the moms and the parents and the caregivers out there who found themselves in these situations who needed to hear that, right? Because we talk a lot about, what we've been doing more positively, but we also got to tell y'all about the work. Like sometimes, look, our days is just as hard as everybody else's days. We choosing our energy by the time we get in here.
Well, and also it's really difficult. And I'll say one last thing about it and we'll hop into our guests, but it is hard, and I don't know if you can relate to this, Cher, but definitely as a Latina woman who's trying to actively break generational curses.
Come on, don't tell them with the generational curse pressure. Come on.
Which we'll have a whole episode on generational curses and as parents trying to actively break those, right? And I'm not saying that the chancla is a generational curse.
No.
But what I am saying is if I pull that chancla out, that's going to tell my kid that they can't be vulnerable and that they can't speak up in this house. And in reality, my husband and I have worked very, very hard to make our home very vulnerable. Yes. They're boys and I'm raising men. And I'm raising responsible, good humans, kind humans who are actively doing things to help others, right? Not just being good with intention, but good with impact. And it is hard. It's hard because in that moment, that heat moment, it is hard to step back and reflect and say, okay, breaking generational curses. That's exactly how it's telling myself too. So
you know what? I'm proud of you because it's not easy. It's not easy. And nobody talk about how sometimes it can be challenging. And though that's not an experience I share, I could definitely know frustration. And I've been on the other side of that. And go ahead. I'm proud of you. Listen, that 5 minutes was a bold move. Okay, because everybody at the height of their emotions, that's a bold move to step away. You do it, that's that corporate. You be like, I think we all just need to have a moment here. Why don't we regroup in 5? You know what I mean?
I sure did do the corporate. I said, we all need to just take a moment and
Oh,
share a
I
little healing.
know. I
That's my
know.
corporate voice,
Go
y'all.
ahead and get them. I said, I already knew what was happening. I said, girl, no, she did not do that. Okay. So listen.
All right.
Let's do it. Let's get going. I will say I am super like fangirling. So listen, y'all. Let me tell you about our guest. So let me just say, y'all already done heard all my little journey, my journeys, right? My single journey. I haven't talked in detail about that, but there's some topics that are on the slate for 2023 that have been like the ones that I'm like, okay, I'm ready to have this conversation, right? But when I saw this cartoonist, right, I had, so you know how sometimes when you go on social media, you find these gems that really kind of hit you at the right time when you need it the absolute most, right? And so I have been following this cartoonist, and I was like, man, like every single visual, whether it was about relationships or being in your singleness or, you know, just your individual like monologue in your head, every time it was resonating with me. And so one of the biggest pieces was, you know, when I think about, you know, my friend circle and the role that I play, I am the single friend, right? It's not very many of us. I'm a few. Like I'm definitely like the only, like I'm the third wheel. And so sometimes that matters, sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of the day, sometimes there's commentary that goes along this, and I could find myself in these cartoons. So it was nice to have the like, oh yeah, so it's not just me, without bringing it up like in a big conversation, right? Where everybody encourage you, like, oh girl, you're gonna find your one, and you like, okay, but that's not why I'm here, right? But the second part of that really resonated with me, and we're going to have a deeper conversation, really was the fact that she specifically spoke about body image. So if for those of you know who don't know, I've had a long history with my weight. And then in 2020, I lost a lot of weight, quite a bit of weight. And so indulging and enjoying this new body, this more healthy version of me has been like only the people closest to me have kind of heard those commentary, right? So when I saw one of the cartoons about, you know, just in general, right? Like just the commentary that goes ahead, these are all the things, like I'm finding all these things, like really when I met this person. So anyway, we are in the UK and this cartoonist is a British cartoonist. So I was like, I need to connect with you. Like, I don't care if I got to get on a train, a plane, we're going to get together. So luckily we reached out. Like I got my bravery because I was like, I'm a little nervous. My armpit's hot, you know? And I reached out to this amazing person who actually said yes to us. I was like, wait a minute, did she reply back from this email and this DM? Okay, let me not lie. Okay, I emailed DM. I was definitely stalker, right? I was about to, like, I definitely was like all these things. And so I want to introduce you all to someone. If you don't know, you need to go follow, subscribe, buy the book, get on the podcast, because this amazing person is a Black cartoonist who really started her career in 2020 during the pandemic and lockdown, right? Really giving people these amazing illustrations and amazing commentary. She's featured in the New Yorker. Like, I mean, her work explores all the things about dating, relationships, identity, politics, navigating adult life, okay, adulting. And so I want to introduce you to her. Her name is Sarah Akinterinwa. And if I said it wrong, come get me, Sarah, because I try my best. I wrote it down with all my Southern accent and tried to get it right, okay? So come on, Sarah, come on. I want you to introduce you, so. Yay!
Hey!
So long. Yeah. Hey. So excited to be on here.
Oh, so, Sarah, it's so exciting to have you on here. When Shara told me about you, I of course quickly went and stalked you also on Instagram and I was like, this is validating all of my feelings from when I was younger. And even, I mean, I still deal, I went the opposite where Shara was at during the pandemic, where she lost the weight and I gained the weight. I was an avid runner. I was an avid, and I just started making cocktails. I had a cocktail garden, and then All stories.
The drinks was
Love
off the
that.
chain. Yes. So Sarah, listen, I find it, look, I'm tearing up already. Listen, I really want to thank you before we get into the questions. I want to thank you for your voice, because I will tell you, as a person who, you know, I grade social media for just a little bit, just to do what I have to do. I'm not a super fan of that because I spent a lot of time overseas where we didn't have social media readily available, or cell phones readily available when we were doing our overseas work. But when I tell you, when I get on, you are the first. Like, I'm like, what did she post today? Like, I need it today. And I will say, I just am a fan to see, no matter where you sit in the world. And I know you're based out, you're in the Europe, and your voice is just resonating all over the world. And it finds me all the time. Like, when my inner dialogue is at its height, it finds me to be like, okay, girl, you got to chill out. Like, you good, girl.
Oh, thank you. So that means so much to me, because that's exactly how I want people to feel. Because I just know that everything that I create is from a genuine, real perspective, and they are my lived experiences most of the time. And it's genuinely because I know someone somewhere might need to hear these things. So hearing that, it impacts you, and it's important to you, and it makes you feel something, makes you feel so, like, I really appreciate that. And it really warms my heart, because it's just nice to have, like, somebody vocally tell me these things. Like, you never know, because you can't speak to all your followers. They can't tell you everything. You only get, like, these DMs or comments or likes. You don't really know what people are thinking. So this means a lot to me. Thank you so much for appreciating my work.
Yeah, I mean, it's always scary when you're pursuing your passion and your purpose in life, and then you're like, am I just creating stuff just to create? I mean, Shara and I have that with our podcast. We just started it not that long ago, and we've had an amazing journey so far. And it's just like, are we doing the right thing? Or, so absolutely just an honor to have you here, Sarah. So usually when we start all of our guests, and in the discovery call, we talked a little bit about the diversity wheel, which I think I sent it to you on the chat. But we always want to know with our guests, before we figure out, like, what you do, although yours is kind of intertwined with who you are and what you do, but you have multiple different identities as well too. But we like to know about this, because we want to know who you are as a person and what are the things that are most important to you. So in that diversity, what are the top 3 dimensions that resonate with you at this moment?
Oh, tough question, because do you know what? I'm always trying to figure out who I am. But when I look at the diversity wheel, I'm really drawn to external dimensions. And for some reason, organizational dimensions with, like, job classification, management status, all these things, I just don't they don't resonate with me at this time in my life. I think I'm more focused on external dimensions. Maybe because of my age, maybe because I'm only about 2 years into my career, two years and a half into my career. And yeah, I think I'm focused on trying to create trying to define my profession, and trying to decide where is the geographical location I'm happiest. Do I need more education? Am I happy with the way I look, my appearance? What is my faith? Like, these are all questions. Like, I don't think I'm even ready to graduate to organizational at the moment. So definitely external dimensions at the moment. And internal dimensions, where it's about, like, age, sexual orientation, race, gender, things that, I can't really control. And I'm still learning to just accept them, accept my race, my identity as a Black woman, accept my sexual orientation, my physical abilities. These are all things that I kind of have to develop some kind of just unconditionally accepting relationship with. And I've kind of moved past that and more, focusing on external dimensions now.
That's so interesting too, because I think, especially in DEI work, when we go into organizations or we talk to individuals, it's very linear, right? And we oftentimes don't think about the intersectionalities that make us who we are. So it's interesting how you started with, like, oh, okay, well, I don't really identify with organizational dimensions, but I'm definitely in the external. This is where I'm at right now. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So how have, being in the external dimensions, and that's where you're kind of sitting at the moment, How has that shown up for you in either the workplace or in your personal life through stereotypes or assumptions being made?
Mm-hmm. I think how it's shown up for me in my work, I think my work is very personal, which is quite challenging. I feel being like having a bit of a social media presence, which I know I don't have the most followers and I don't have the biggest audience, but a lot of my work is based on my life and things that I've experienced. I try to at times make it not autobiographical, but I do have to, I sometimes feel like I have to talk about what's going on with me, my love life, my family life, my body image, all these kind of things. So it all kind of intertwines sometimes, and I'm sort of monetizing my experiences and monetizing aspects of my life that, you know, a typical person wouldn't. So it's really interesting because I think I'm having quite a unique experience when it comes to my career and my personal life. They're a little bit intertwined, but that kind of does, I think, making a living from creating cartoons about my own experiences forces me to kind of look at who am I and what am I doing, basically. Like, you know, how is my love life going? You know, I talk about it on my own podcast. I make cartoons about it. And who are my friends? I talk about these things too. And how do I feel about myself, my self-image, my body image? And again, I talk about it, and sometimes I make money from it. So yeah, it's unique. I sometimes wonder, would I be this introspective if I was, I don't know, like a dentist or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm having to think about who I am every day, and sometimes it's really exhausting. It's a journey. It really is.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, because they hear that from me all the time on this podcast, because it's like the vulnerability of it all when they start to intersect with what your passion is and you're doing professionally and then who you are. I mean, it is really challenging because you're evolving. Like the person I was, you know, when we started this podcast last June and to now has grown so much, and the vulnerability of just keep revealing and unfolding different parts of you. And, you know, people sometimes see you in the lens that they last saw you or the last year that they saw you. And so you
They
have to
always
kind
have
of,
an opinion about it. They
I
always
mean,
have an opinion about it.
seriously, and want to know the journey. Like they want to investigate. Like, why you? So what's going on here? Why you seem so different? Like what? In all of that pieces, you gotta. It's hard enough to be vulnerable and put yourself out there and be very passionate about your purpose. But even though, to your point, you know, having these conversations for the whole world to hear is not easy. And also your cartoons, like they're going all around the world, and I mean, they're really resonating with people. But I will say you have this unique ability, Sarah, to capture the internal and external chatter around really hard topics like dating and relationships and being in the unknown status, situational entanglements, you know. And then also you really get lead in with adulthood. Like you be like, okay, so we adulting, we got some adulthood. But I love it selfishly that it's with the D&I lens, like a diversity lens. It resonates like, oh, this is from a Black cartoonist or someone who has a perspective of Blackness or people of color, awareness of people of color. And I love that piece. I find myself laughing all the time. Like seriously, like people just be like, why are you laughing? Like, yo, this cartoon, and they read it and they're like, that's because this not your experience. You know what I mean? Like this may not be your experience, but I just want to understand, like, how important is it to illustrate and create, you know, this dialogue visually with a diversity lens?
It's extremely important to me because growing up, I was a bookworm. I loved books with illustration. I was obsessed. And I was particularly obsessed with artwork that was about people like me and not like like paintings. I'm talking about like funny little illustrations and cartoons that just reflected people who look like me, and not just people who look exactly like me, but people of color in general. There just wasn't enough. And I remember I'd go to the library and like hoard all the books that I could find with Black children and anyone who was Black, anyone who was Asian, anyone who just wasn't white. And I would hoard them and I'd read them one by one. And obviously I grew up and I wasn't reading books with illustrations as much. I was reading like normal books with no illustration that were just about white people. And most of the stories I was consuming, most of the media I was consuming was about white people. And I think becoming a cartoonist was my opportunity to tell our story without making it all about race and the identity of race, but making it just realistic. Like, the reality is, as women of color, we don't spend all day thinking about being Black or being brown or being Asian or anything like that. We have very normal experiences. Like, we date, we do our hair, we're just like, we're very normal, we're human. And I want to tell our stories while acknowledging our identity, but not centering the story around our identity. Do you know what I mean? And that is why it's so important to me. And I think that's why white people, and maybe people who maybe don't identify with me and my race, feel a sense of, identity. Like, they relate to the stories, because it's like, okay, she just happens to be Black and she happens to be a woman. But I've been in situationships. I've struggled with relationships as well. Like, or I've been through the same scenarios. And I just want to see us in everyday scenarios, you know, like, just
Yes.
normal.
Yes.
Because we're so normal. Some of us are mediocre, and that's okay. You know, just everyday. Like, some of us struggle with our body image. Some of us don't have big bums or aren't curvy. And I just wanted to tell these stories, and it is for women of color. It's for my community, you know, without making it obvious. I think it's kind of like something that me and women of color kind of have like an unspoken thing between us. Like, this is for you secretly, but everyone can enjoy it.
That's what I was saying to myself.
Hey,
I was like, I know this for me.
I can completely resonate with that, because especially here in the UK, obviously there's not a lot of Latino people here, and I go to, and I'm in the Northwest, so it's very there's a dominant culture here, right? And so I go into some of these places and I love food. You'll as you know me, Sarah, I love food, and I love cooking, and I feel like it brings the community as part of it. So I had this experience where I went into this marketplace and there was a taqueria there, and I was like, oh, taqueria, it's tacos. No, it was burritos and nachos, and no, not trying to downplay it, but there were two white guys running the thing, and I was like, oi. And you know, I had to take a step back and think, why is this bothering me so much? And I said, I know why it's bothering me. Not because a white guy can't do tacos. I'm pretty sure I know plenty of white guys who can do very good tacos. It's the fact that, you know what, like, I need to be doing something and representing my culture in that sense, and bringing my flavors and my traditions and my community, and bringing this out to. And I would imagine that's something very similar to an artist, to an author like yourself. And so, just kind of curious, I know you have your book, you know, you turned all your experiences and your illustrations into your book called What You'll Never Find, the One, and Why It Doesn't Matter. Um, what was your experience, and what was your why for becoming an author, and why this topic now?
So my reason for writing this book is because in the last few years, I've had the most weirdest love life ever. And it's just kind of changed, because I'm in my late 20s now, and it feels a lot different to when I was in my early 20s. And I feel like I'm more like switched on. People say like your prefrontal cortex starts developing at 25 or something like that. Like, you kind of have this switch on moment where it's like, oh, I'm very aware of myself, and I'm more mature, and I'm wiser, not making as many crazy decisions. And I feel like in the last few years, that's what's happened for me. And I'm very aware of how awful men can be and how difficult dating can be. And I've learned so much. I've been in all kinds of relationships, and I just think to myself, and I've just had this kind of revelation where it was like, I'm really good on my own. I do want to find love, and I am a romantic, and I do have moments where I feel very frustrated. I want to meet someone. I want to be in love, but at the same time, I'm so happy and grateful to be single and to be available, and that I show up for myself, and I'm functioning really well as a single woman. Like, I'm grateful for this, and I'm grateful that if I meet someone, it would be a very good version of myself that they get to date. And I want to kind of put this all together and put it in a book, so people can, if someone's struggling in the way that I was before I came to this point, they have something to look to and think, okay, like, I can do it too. And another side of it is, in the book, I talk a lot about how nobody's perfect and you are not going to meet there isn't one person who you're compatible with in reality. There are so many different people. Like there's billions of people on the planet, and there isn't just one person who is like the person. Like you're going to meet so many the ones in your life, and you might choose one person to stay with, and they're going to change and evolve throughout your time together. And it's just kind of a realistic approach to dating, so that even if you are single, you can stay realistic. And if you're in a relationship, you can also stay realistic to kind of protect yourself and protect your boundaries. And like, I don't know if de-romanticize is the word, but de-romanticize the idea of finding love. That's what the whole thing is.
I mean, we kind of talked about that all of that, right? Because it's a wonderful thing, but you have to want the good things and you have to want the bad things that come with it too, right? Because right now you are single, you have autonomy, you can make all the decisions that you want to do without anybody telling you no, but it's also scary too, right? Like, so if you have things that break in your house, it's just you, right? Everything's on top of you.
Yeah.
And so, but and now it's like, from my experience, where I've been married now for 12 years, it's like, I can't make decisions on my, well, I can, but I have to take someone's in consideration. Now I have 3 people to take in consideration.
Yeah. But I love this because we never talk about how much dating and having relationships or, pseudo relationships where people, you kind of grab some new things throughout those experiences that sometimes you take on that's important to you. Like, I'll be honest with you. I never thought of dating and relationships in that way, right? I was taught that you just find your one. So breaking it up and meeting people, and then they bring curiosity and interest, and sometimes your red flags, you're like, that's never gonna happen again, okay? But they bring all those things, and then all of a sudden you now got this new sense of things that are available to you when you date and experience life. And I never knew that was a possibility until I started kind of doing, like, literally just being more open with the relationships that I try and the people that I meet, and opening that's my mind, one, and then 2, enjoying those experiences. Because, before, I would be like, oh no, that person, that's not somebody I'm gonna spend my life with. But I'm not spending my life with every single person. So let's just keep finding things that brings out the good parts and the best parts of me as well as them. And then if those things don't necessarily work, at least I still have those things that I've gained in those experiences. So I'm loving that. Like, that's the best part of like this space. But I will tell you that the autonomy versus, that commitment, sometimes we playing, that's why I love your cartoons, because I'm like, yeah, I was thinking that, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that right now, because I like to just get on a plane and go and see the world without somebody with me. I don't need 2 tickets. I just want 1 ticket for me. But
yeah, oh, absolutely. You know what? That's what the book is all about, and exactly what you described, like dating, but you like going on dates without the hope of finding your husband. Because the reality is, you might not. You might just have a drink. You might just have a meal and go home, and it might be a waste of your makeup. It might be a waste of a nice outfit. But I feel like just have fun. Just go with the flow, and you don't have to be like, the superwoman, like I mentioned earlier. Like, you don't have to be superwoman. I want to be single. I don't need a man, Miss Independent. Like, you can have days where it's like, I wish I wasn't doing this on my own. And I wish there was someone else to make a decision with. I wish there was someone to help me hang this frame, or help me. And I was talking to my sister about this the other day. Like, while I do feel this way, like while I do feel happy being single, it would be nice to go on a date sometimes and he's the one. And it would be nice to have someone just help me cook my dinner while I finish my work.
Yes.
Or help me with the laundry or something. Yes. So it's about finding that balance and being honest with yourself and realistic with yourself, and letting yourself feel all the feelings.
So you said something, I gotta ask the question. So when you go on these dates, do they know that you got this book? I mean, the pressure be on. I'll be like, I don't know.
Well, I don't always mention it. I take my time. I kind of have to gauge the guy first, because it's a very intimidating title. Like, it's very negative. So whenever I mention, I'm writing a book, I'm like, what's it called? I'm like, why you'll never find the one. And they're like, oh, you're one of those women, like you're like raging feminist.
No.
And I'm like, but it's really positive on the inside. It's just like an eye-catching title. But yes, it does put men off for sure. Like a lot of my work does put men off. I've had men go on my, like, I'll talk to them on a dating app and then they'll be like, oh, can I see your Instagram? And I refer them and then they've unmatched me because they are so intimidated by the cartoons. And a lot of the cartoons are about, you know, how terrible men can be. And I don't really mind because I think that's kind of good for me. Like you're weeding out, you're taking yourself out.
I was gonna say, yeah, and this is so cliche, and this is like an old married woman, y'all. Y'all get ready. She's coming out. The old married lady's coming out. But you know, one of the things that when I met my husband and I had gone through this whole dating experience of you know, dating all the wrong people, and the only thing that I got from those guys was music. That's why I have such an eclectic music life, love, as Sharon noticed. But when I met my husband, I was like, I'm gonna be just myself, and I'm not gonna pay attention to him. I'm not gonna give him my all. I may give him some time. We'll see. And for a long time, I'm like, well, you didn't ask me to be your girlfriend, so we're not really together. And, you know, and it was just, he's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, you can't just assume that we're together. You have to like ask me. And I had all these things, you know, and he just kept breaking all these walls. And I didn't do it intentionally to challenge him. I did it because I knew exactly who I was and what I stood for, and I wanted somebody to enhance my life versus to complete me or make my life or whatever, because he very much knows to this day I know how to build a fire in the UK. Come on. I can build a fire by myself, and I learned how to turn on and turn off the boiler, and I could drive a manual on the other side of the road. So he knows I don't need you. I want you. I choose you every day. And he knows that. He absolutely knows that.
I love that. And that is such a powerful place to come to as a woman, because we're not really socialized to try and find ourselves. It's only just like in the new age that women are realizing actually we're humans and we have such a beautiful, colorful identity and that we should have access to. We're not just a man's property. And I think it's so powerful to be able to say, I don't need you. You're just complementing my life and I love you, but I'm already whole on my own. And, you know, being in my 20s, I'm not 100% there. Like I have days where I'm like, no, I definitely need a man. I'm not complete with that one. But most days I'm like, I'm good. I'm fine on my own. And I'm still learning that because I'm still growing up. I think we're all still growing up. But I know that one day I'll come to that place too. And that where I'm just like, you know, I'm good. I just want someone who is whole on his own and wants to do life with me, you know? I don't want to have to be his shadow or an asset to him. Like we are just two people doing life together. And yeah, I can't wait for that moment as well.
I share that same optimism too. I think that's what people don't really appreciate. I think first and foremost, I will say that I feel like your cartoons are definitely balanced. So if people just see one, you need to look at the totality of the work because I definitely feel like it's a balanced conversation. The second piece is I think it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, there's a lot of negative rhetoric around dating right now. And I just kind of ignore it because I'm like, there's a lot of optimism out here. I mean, as far as how I experienced it, I also find that, you know, when people show you the negative parts of them early on, or they got all these requirements and these check boxes, they just not your person unless that's what you want to sign up for. But the experience around dating has been really positive, and I think it's gotten a real bad reputation right lately just because of like a lot of the media around different groups and how their interpretation of like value and no value. But I'm gonna tell you right now, girl be in the streets, and when I be in the streets, we will be like, hey, I'll be like, hey, hello. And well, listen, I know we talk a lot about data, and I'm sorry because that's just what I just fanning over all your work. But you had a major milestone, so don't think, okay, we checked off the book. Okay, that's one. We got that. But now we're going to talk about the fact that you did a whole exhibit at the Cartoon Museum in London. Okay, a whole exhibit. So first of all, y'all, that means she had all this like it had her name and all her stuff. Don't disrespect. Like y'all need to know this is that girl. But we weren't able to see it. We didn't know about it, but we found out about it when we did our research. So tell us, or at least tell the listeners, what has that journey for you to see your work displayed, and like what did it mean to see it, and what did we miss? Like what was the visual story?
So it was I was really lucky to get an opportunity to work with the Cartoon Museum, and it was basically the whole theme was exploring how the women in cartooning and notable women in cartooning. So it was my work in response to a cartoonist, one of the, I think the first woman cartoonist we know of in the UK, called Mary Darley, and she basically went around London and like would see people and draw them like funny kind of characters she'd see, like people wearing weird outfits, or like poor people or rich people from abroad. And she would draw them and sell these like single panel cartoons as prints. And unfortunately, at the end of her life, she was quite poor because her husband had died and she had all these kids. And even though she was this amazing cartoonist, she ended her life because she was a woman, quite poor, just didn't have a very good life, and ended up having to quit her job as a cartoonist and work in a factory, I believe. And then compared to me in 2022, because she's from like the 1700s and I'm in 2022, and I'm a Black woman in the UK. There were probably not very many Black women in the UK back then. And I did kind of a similar thing to what Mary Darley did. So I created a collection of people around London, like different characters, like influencers, tourists, the people who work in the train station. I drew like single panels and gave them like a little caption, and we displayed it in the exhibition in along with some of Mary Darley's work, and just to see like the comparison, like the style of art, the style of language, our different stories. And I just thought how interesting it is now that you can be Black and a woman and a cartoonist, because in the UK we don't have a lot of cartoonists, and most of them are white men. And there's like a handful of white women, and then there's like, I don't think I know of a single other Black woman cartoonist in the UK. And even in the United States, like there aren't very many either. So yeah, I think it was such a privilege to have that exhibit, and I think it started a lot of conversations around women in cartooning and people of color in cartooning. So that was a lot of fun and such an opportunity, honestly.
I think that's so powerful to elevating voices. I mean, again, like we put ourselves out there, we say our stories and we tell other people's stories. And I think that visual, I could just imagine because I'm pulling up her cartoons right now and just seeing your cartoons too. Like there's so many similarities, but there's also differences too, because obviously the lens of a Black woman in London versus the lens of a white woman in London, like it's beautiful to see all those differences. But we are all people, right? We are all people, and we're living in it, and we have experiences. Some of them are similar, some are different because of our cultures. So it's just so powerful and just wonderful. One of the things that we haven't touched on, and I'm gonna switch a little bit. I know we talked a lot about your work and your cartooning. I know you have your own podcast called Hating My Body and Desirability.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, and your experience on doing that podcast.
So that episode, yeah, I think that's my most recent episode, and it just felt really important to talk about. Again, like my podcast it feels more like just another way to connect with my audience, and also just kind of a place for me to ramble and just talk about what's important to me, and also subjects that are often related to what cartoons I create. But that particular episode, I really wanted to bring in like culture and upbringing and things like that, and how they impacted my body image. Because I do struggle so much with my body image. I hate what people call like second puberty, which is when like apparently, I don't know the biology behind it, but like I gained a bit of weight, especially over the pandemic. I too was eating a lot and I was loving it. I love the fact that, food brought me so much joy, and I wasn't moving a lot. I didn't have to go to work because I was made redundant, and I just sat on the sofa and ate, and it was great. And I never really lost a lot of the weight. But and to this day, like I'm still like quite thicker and curvier than I was before the pandemic. And it's been a struggle to come to a place of acceptance that this is my body and this might be my body for a long time. And maybe I'm just like naturally more curvier and thicker than how I used to be, and that's okay. And not every day feels good. Not every day is like a body positive day. I might put something on and be like, oh my goodness, like that does not look good. And other days I'm like, this is me, this is my body, and I'm okay with it. And I know that I have a lot of internalized fat phobia, and I know I have to challenge it. And I know that it's not all from me, it's also from my childhood, growing up in a Black household, and the Black community can be very fat phobic. And I was a chubby kid, so which I talk about in the episode. I wasn't extremely chubby, and I wasn't very, like, you wouldn't look at me and think that that's a fat kid. But because my family was so fat phobic, and everyone's quite slim in my family, you know, my siblings are all generally slim, like normal size, and I was just I was quite short and bit chubby, especially before I hit puberty. And there were so many comments like daily about my weight, and my parents poke fun at me and how much I eat. And I had an uncle say to me once, like, I don't know what the conversation was about, but I remember him saying, well, you're not going to find a husband easily because you're fat. And I was 8 years old.
Wow.
And I know that, and I wasn't upset about it, but I didn't realize how it was making me feel until I started growing up and thinking, I'm fat. Even when I lost a lot of weight in secondary school, when I hit puberty, I got quite slim. I still thought I was fat. And it wasn't until someone said to me, you're not fat at all, you're skinny. Like, what are you talking about? When I was telling them I needed to go on a diet. And I was 11 or 12 years old. And then I was like, I'm not fat. I didn't know I wasn't fat anymore. And it's just crazy, because now all of that is still in my head. Like, all of these things from childhood are still with me, and I'm really glad to be aware of it, because now I can challenge it and create my own identity around my body image.
And I'm just sitting here and thinking about how I was when I was, because I'm 10 years older than you are, Sarah. And so and it makes me so sad that we're still yet creating, and I have nieces who are 15 and in their early 20s, and they are all going through the same thing. And I'm like, when is this cycle going to end, right? Because yes, there is, like, you know, growing up in a Latin community, we have the same thing. There's a lot of fat phobia in there, but then I didn't have the tools to figure out what I should be eating, because the only vegetables that I used to eat were the tomato and the onion and the salsa. That's it. You know, everything else, and we had, you know, red meat, rice, and tortillas. Like, so I had to relearn all of this stuff, and then I was just fighting for a number and fighting for a body type that I actually was never going to be attainable for me, because I do carry extra weight. You know, I'm curvy. So I'm like, I really had to change my mindset on, you know, I don't want to be skinny. I want to be strong and flexible and you know, and strong. So it's just sad. Yeah.
I would say, this episode hit hard for me quite a bit. It was like all the things that you said, the reflective, the comments, you know, the balance between just the childhood piece is really not as resonating as much, but the desirability, right? Like owning my own commentary about my body, and when I look in the mirror, and what are those things that I need to affirm, and like what's real, right? Like for me, I'm like, okay, I can't be 10 more pounds since yesterday. Like, that's ridiculous. We're tripping. Like, you got to get it together, Shara. But I also need to be like, okay, if I really don't like what I see, or I want to affirm and those types of things, then what am I going to put in action? But the other part is really that self-talk, like, okay, this body is really doing all the things I asked it to do every day. So how about I love you for a little bit? Let me just love on you. And also, you know, to your point, the curves they do change all over time. And, you know, things just start to just look different and feel different. I'm like, I gotta embrace this, because I'm not about to go and get no surgery to change it. Even though I know that no shade to anybody who does, but it's like, no, this body is for me. And if I'm gonna love this body, then yes, I have the balance between what my mind is telling me, my eyes are telling me, and what I know in my heart who I am. And so I love that episode. If y'all haven't listened to that episode, make sure you like, subscribe. To Sarah was just giving life in that episode. And I think it will be a great something you take with your friends and go have a conversation when y'all get the wine out and have a conversation. But we're coming to the end of our times here. And believe me, I don't want it to end. But I want to just start with like a reflection and really a gratitude, quite frankly. I mean, you cover so many topics in the work that you do. And I'm so glad that you not only share your illustrations with the world, but also that you have your podcast and your book and you exhibit your work in museums. But I just appreciate the fact that when I come to your site, I don't have to deal with anything other than just being a person, right? Like I'm not hit over the head with all the things that's not working in the world. I get to just have a human experience with your illustrations, and I'm not concerned about what's not happening, right? Like I get to have humor. I get to have like some validated moments. I get to laugh about like some things I've told myself, or, you know, just in general, just be present. So I want to thank you for that. But I also want to give to our audience the question, like, if you're not experiencing social media or other places where it's really bringing something in meaningful for you, try some new content. And I'm pointing you over here to Sarah stuff, because whatever stage of life, I think you'll find it. Like I'm telling you, I'm fangirling over the new Train series, like the bubbles over the people on the train. I be like, I was just on a train and I be trying to know what people be thinking. And I'm telling you, I done had them thoughts, or I thought other people had them. But if y'all know what I'm talking about, y'all better sign up and get on. Liz.
Yes. So, well, you know, it's funny, Shara, because I'm reading a book about train commuters. And then when I was looking at Sarah's Instagram, I'm like, is it the same book? Like, what is this? But Sarah, first of all, I just want to thank you so much for being so courageous and brave for doing something like this, for seeing a need and saying, actually, there's not enough representation. There aren't people that look like me. Let me just go ahead and create it. Because that takes so much bravery and courage, and you know, and putting yourself out there and being vulnerable. So I want to actually challenge our audience and our listeners to take that as an example of what bravery and courage and vulnerability looks like, because you can be all three of those things all at one. And I think you're a great example of what all those three things looks like. So I want to thank you for coming on a podcast, and I'll open it up to you to see if you have any closing remarks or reflection for us.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. Honestly, like this was such a meaningful, uplifting conversation. And I think, yeah, all I have to say is I hope that anybody who needs it took what they needed from the conversation, especially around body image, around being yourself when it comes to dating realistically, just showing up for yourself. And I really hope that, yeah, especially in terms of the diversity wheel, I really hope that anybody who's in the same position as me and just focusing on like your social status, your education, your appearance, your body image, and things like that, I really wish you strength and resilience as you navigate this really interesting, complex, beautiful journey that is life and identity. And yeah, I really appreciate talking to you guys today, and I'm really excited for this episode to come out.
We are too. And thank you for bringing humor to something, because oftentimes it is a very serious conversation.
Yes.
And I think humor really helps kind of facilitate that conversation. So thank you, Sarah, so much. And thank you to our listeners for following us. Please follow Sarah on Instagram.
Yes.
All her please, let's go ahead and bring wealth to her and her family and her futures. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So yes, and while you're on it, please go follow us too and bring wealth and you know all that stuff to our futures. Like, let me just go ahead and put that in there too. But follow us on More Than Words podcast. Send us the guests, send us your questions. Go to morethanwordspodcast.com. Follow us on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you want to hear your podcast. All right.